Coming up on our newscast tonight. South Korea is one major step closer to taking driverless cars mainstream. A new test bed is opened near Seoul for researchers to try out their latest technology on all kinds of roads and highways. In the fourth industrial revolution, South Korea looks to robotics and healthcare as its new economic growth engines. Big data will be used to improve medical treatment, and robots will help people in their daily lives. And the world celebrates Human Rights Day. South Korean President Jaein says the lingering conflict on the Korean peninsula is a human rights challenge. We'll also look at the astounding progress South Korea has made in terms of human rights. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Seoul. You're watching Arirang News Center, coming to you live. I'm Devin Whiting. Our top story this evening, South Korea in the era of the self-driving car. A new test bed for driverless technology opened on Monday, K-City. Prime Minister Jaein went to celebrate its opening and to encourage the nation's automakers. Cha Sang-mi has this report.
It reads, "Opening the future for cars." A new testbed for driverless technology, K-City, opened on Monday for automakers and researchers to come and test their latest innovations. K-City is a 350 square kilometer urban center built in Hwasong, Gyeonggi-do province with almost all imaginable scenarios and road environments for self-driving vehicles. It has all different kinds of lanes, freeways, and autonomous parking lots. The opening ceremony was attended by Prime Minister Jaein, who gave some words of encouragement to officials from the Transport Ministry and to automakers working on future cars.
Our auto industry is now at a turning point. We expect Korean companies, including automakers, to discern where the market and their competitors are going, to look toward and promptly prepare for the future.
He also said the government is doing its best not only to cut regulations, but to allocate more of its budget, nearly $900 million to the sector for the coming year. South Korea entered the auto industry much later than countries like the United States. It started out making cars out of parts from American Jeeps, but now it's one of the world's top 5 automakers. Pointing to that example, Prime Minister Lee expressed confidence that Korea's autonomous cars will meet with similar success. He said the focus, though, will still be on the safety of the Korean people.
What's more important than technological skills is safety, whose importance we've been feeling lately. I hope South Korea's future cars will be the safest in the world.
Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution has identified 2 key areas where the country can harness the Fourth Industrial Revolution to grow its economy. Those are healthcare and the robotics industry. Big data and artificial intelligence can improve medical treatment, and robotics can be used in a range of industries and in daily life. Our So In-kyung has the details.
Healthcare and robotics will be the 2 main growth drivers of the Korean economy. This is according to a presidential committee founded to find economic growth opportunities in preparation for the fourth industrial revolution. The committee said that Korea will lead the healthcare industry by utilizing fourth industrial revolution technologies such as big data and artificial intelligence. The global healthcare AI market will see annual growth of 52.7% from 2016 to 2020, according to market research company Frost & Sullivan. With the vision of creating a society where everyone is healthy, the committee has set up the goals of extending the healthy lifespan from 73 years old in 2015 to 76 years old in 2020 and increasing the number of jobs in the healthcare sector from 130,000 in 2016 to 180,000 in 2020. In addition, the committee plans to make a standardized big data management system for the healthcare industry. To do so, it will recruit 300 ordinary citizens and cancer survivors and conduct analysis on the genetic and medical history of the participants. The findings will be utilized to generate advanced knowledge of collecting and making use of patients' data. Artificial intelligence will be used to help develop new drugs more economically and in a shorter period of time. The Presidential Committee also sees the robotics industry as a potential growth engine. Although Korea's robot technology is fourth in the world following Japan, the US, and Europe, Korean companies haven't fully commercialized the technology. The committee will come up with ways to support robotics in a range of fields from medicine and logistics to national defense. So that robots can be used in people's daily lives, they'll be provided to the elderly and disabled first. By end of this year, 1,000 robots will be provided to help them with their mobility and be a companion to talk to. The Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution was founded last year and on Monday had its first official meeting after a reshuffle of members. 차은경, Arirang News.
A little over a week ago, South Korea's 3 major mobile carriers launched the world's first commercial 5G services. With more on the opportunities, socioeconomic effects, and future challenges, Kim Hye-sung reports.
On December 1st, South Korea became the first country in the world to launch 5G mobile network for business users. 20 times faster than 4G LTE, a 5G network can transmit 20 gigabytes a second, or in other words, users can download a 90-minute-long movie in a single second.
By launching standard 5G mobile network services ahead of countries like the US and China, South Korea can now lead the standardization of 5G in the world. That means setting standards for 5G devices, equipment, and content services. There will be new investment and technological innovation that will create new momentum for growth.
Known as the key infrastructure that will enable the fourth industrial revolution, 5G technology revolutionizes connectivity across industries thanks to its speed and reliability, leading advances in areas like driverless cars, telemedicine, smart factories, and more. 5G is expected to create an economic value of nearly $43 billion by 2030 in South Korea by expanding the supply chain value system such as business equipment, 5G smartphone and apps, media content, and the Internet of Things. Globally, market researcher IHS Markit says 5G will generate over $12 trillion of global economic output and support 22 million jobs by 2035. To seize the opportunity, 3 major telecom operators in South Korea said they'll allocate a combined $18 billion as an initial investment, but it might take a while before they reap the rewards.
There's a lot of hype about the fourth industrial revolution, but really the market hasn't been created yet. 5G B2B and B2C markets, like driverless cars, will need time to take hold, meaning investors might have to wait more than 10 years for a return. Investors need to look at 5G as a long-term investment, and government incentives like tax cuts or the early creation of smart cities will be helpful in driving innovation.
Safety, privacy, and industry guidelines are also critical issues that businesses and government need to address. But the era of 5G services has just begun, and its development depends on how the users adopt them. And experts say the near-term direction of development will become clearer after 5G smartphones for individual consumers are launched in South Korea in March 2019. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Today, December 10th, is Human Rights Day, an occasion observed around the world. At a ceremony this morning in Seoul, South Korean President Jaein said human rights are about accepting differences and interacting with others to maintain balance. President Moon also said that South Korea, as a nation that's endured colonization, dictatorship, and war, has an unparalleled level of human rights. But he stressed that more work needs to be done. Take a listen.
평화를 통해 인권이 보장되고 인권을 통해 평화가 확보되는 것입니다. 한반도에서 냉전의 잔재를 해체하고 항구적 평화를 정착시키는 것은 우리 민족 모두의 인권과 사람다운 삶을 위한 것입니다.
President Moon, after the late President Roh Moo-hyun, is just the second sitting president to attend the event. And he said he hopes to realize democracy, human rights, peace, and prosperity, which he said will provide hope for the world. Now, a little more on Human Rights Day. The International Declaration of Human Rights was passed 70 years ago today by the UN. Our Oh Si-young takes a closer look at the document itself and its significance here in South Korea, where human rights have advanced steadily over the years.
A photo exhibition in Seoul for International Human Rights Day shows the 70-year-old history of human rights in South Korea.
There were various cases of human rights abuses carried out by authorities, but we also saw the spirit of the Korean people try and overcome these cases. In the April 19th revolution, the June democracy movement, and recently the candlelight rallies that oust President Park Geun-hye. We try to show these different aspects.
The International Declaration of Human Rights was adopted on December 10, 1948, by the United Nations General Assembly, calling for equal rights to life, freedom of expression and religion. Over the decades, South Korea has ratified various UN conventions that embody the spirit of the declaration. After breaking free from brutal Japanese occupation and a series of authoritarian governments, the country has seen vast improvements in civil and political rights. However, amid the ongoing Me Too movement, the rise of hate crimes around the world, and issues concerning minorities in Korea, human rights experts in Seoul discussed ways to deal with modern challenges.
Nowadays, the paradigm is changing. It's from civil and political right to ESCL, economic, social, and cultural right, especially discrimination issues. Discrimination against women, against children, against LGBT people, against social minorities. Because these days, the Korean situation is critically weak in terms of social polarization, economic polarization between the have and the have-nots.
International observers have called for a stronger legal framework to support universal human rights values.
The groundwork is there in South Korean law also. And one example I'd like to refer to, if possible, is the recent ruling on November 1 at the Supreme Court, which acquitted a conscientious objector. A reference made by 3 judges was to emphasize that under Article 6 of the South Korean Constitution, international treaties are legally binding domestically. So taking this precedent forward, I think it's very important that we move to ensure that all human rights are protected.
Looking ahead to 2030, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals envision a world of universal respect for human rights and dignity, justice, equality and non-discrimination. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
Also today, President Moon issued a letter of appointment for his new Deputy Prime Minister, who will also serve as the Minister of Economy and Finance. That's Hong Nam-gi, who's due to be inaugurated on Tuesday. The 58-year-old has long served in various public posts, including as the head of the Government Policy Coordination Office. Replacing the current finance chief, Kim Dong-yeon, Hong Nam-gi will be in charge of leading the second phase of President Moon's economic policies. The operator of Korea's stock markets has decided to allow traders to resume buying and selling shares of Samsung BioLogics. The company is accused of intentionally breaking accounting rules to inflate its profits. But the exchange said Monday, after a meeting of its corporate review committee, that in the interest of maintaining the company's continuity and transparency and to protect investors, trading will resume on Tuesday. The company was suspended a month ago after the findings by the Financial Services Commission. The Korea Development Institute says the local economy is showing signs of a gradual slowdown, mainly due to low domestic demand and slower export growth. Our Ko Ryun-hee has more on the state-run think tank's monthly evaluation.
The Korean economy appears to be gradually slowing down, according to the Korea Development Institute on Monday. The state-run think tank said in its monthly report that domestic demand remained weak due to sluggish investment. Facilities investment in October went up by more than 9% on-year, which marks a big jump from the previous month, marked by a decline of nearly 20%. However, the institute stressed that there were fewer working days in September due to the major national holiday of Chuseok falling in that month, which was celebrated over the span of 5 days, including 3 weekdays. The overall situation remains grim as a series of leading indicators related to facilities investment remain stagnant. For instance, orders of special industrial machineries decreased in October. A researcher at the KDI says lower investment in the semiconductor sector is one of the main reasons for the downward trend.
The growth rate of facilities investments was high last year because the semiconductor boom led to an increase in investment in related industries. This year, however, the growth rate is low because facilities investment was already complete.
Slowdown in consumption also contributed to low domestic demand. Retail sales went up by 5% in October. However, the KDI pointed out that average figures during September and October were lower than August, meaning that the overall situation isn't looking great. Another culprit for the local economy slowdown was observed in exports. Exports in November merely increased by 4.5%, which is significantly lower than the previous month growth rate of almost 23%. The drop in exports was mainly observed in semiconductors and petrochemical products. Meanwhile, October's overall industry production grew by almost 7% on year, thanks to increased production in the mining, manufacturing, and services industries. 고르니, Arirang News.
Now looking closer at South Korea's government budget. The Unification Ministries released the details of its spending for next year. To keep improving ties with North Korea, and its budget for inter-Korean cooperation has been raised by 15%, which puts it over the 1 trillion Korean won mark for the first time since 2016. Oh Jung-hee has the details.
To maintain peace on the Korean peninsula and to further improve ties with North Korea, the South Korean government is upping its budget next year for inter-Korean cooperation. On Monday, Seoul's Unification Ministry released its 2019 spending plan. It calls for spending 1.1 trillion won, or almost $1 billion on the ministry's inter-Korean cooperation fund, a rise of 15% from this year. For inter-Korean economic cooperation, South Korea is raising its budget by over 60%. The money will be used to connect and upgrade railways and roads between the two Koreas, as well as to lay the foundation for future economic cooperation. Grants, mostly for companies doing work on the projects, will rise by 25%, up to $274 million. In loans, mostly for the equipment to be provided to the north, by almost 500% to just over $100 million. With grand goals ahead for inter-Korean forestry cooperation, spending in that field will increase by 280%, mainly for disease and pest control work and modernizing the North's tree nurseries. Another big part of Seoul's agenda is resolving humanitarian issues. Seoul is upping its budget to support families separated by the Korean War by 230% so that they can communicate and interact with each other more often and more freely. The money is to be used to restore the meeting facilities and enable video reunions and video letters. With the budget for civic exchanges and medical cooperation set to rise as well, Seoul says it also plans to increase its budget for inter-Korean talks by over 100%. That increase just by the numbers alone shows that South Korea aims to communicate with the North more regularly and systematically to keep their ties stable and, more importantly, sustainable. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
And the Unification Ministry is not the only government ministry planning to spend more. Defense is getting a boost of more than $40 billion, and at 8.2%, it's the biggest annual increase in defense spending in years, and comes despite the recent thaw in tensions with North Korea. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Park Ji-won has the details.
The South Korean government is hiking its national defense budget by 8.2% to about $42 billion next year. It's the biggest yearly expansion in the defense budget since 2008 and almost double the average annual increase of 4.4% seen from 2010 to 2017. The Ministry of National Defense says it received the same amount the government requested earlier this year, but some readjustments within the budget were made by lawmakers during the deliberation process. The ministry added the approval shows the National Assembly's firm support for a strong national defense posture. The biggest chunk of the defense budget, some $28 billion, is for the maintenance of troops and military assets, a hike of 5.7% from the previous year. The ministry aims to use the funds to make the armed forces smarter and more efficient. It will do so by improving training methods as well as upgrading uniforms and combat gear to bring them in line with cutting-edge military technology. Troops will also get more medical support, receive better training, and living conditions in barracks will be enhanced. Around $14 billion will be spent on the development and improvement of defense capabilities, such as the acquisition of state-of-the-art weaponry like aircraft and naval destroyers. This category saw a more than 13% increase compared to the last budget. About $4.5 billion will be spent on establishing the three-pronged military strategy to counter North Korean threats as well as future unknown threats. They are namely the Kill Chain Preemptive Strike System, the Korean Air and Missile Defense System, and the Korea Massive Punishment and Retaliation Strategy. Another $4.7 billion will go towards strengthening the command control system in line with preparations for the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. About $9 million has been allocated for the implementation of the Inter-Korean Military Agreement, such as the removal of some frontline guard posts in the demilitarized zone. Another $10 million has been set aside for projects linked to the recovery of Korean war remains. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Last month, the two Koreas each removed almost a dozen guard posts on the border. Now, they need to officially verify that that's been done, which they're planning to do together on Wednesday. And ahead of that, North Korea has been setting up yellow flags along the military demarcation line to mark where officials will meet. According to Seoul's defense ministry, each side's inspection team will rendezvous with guides from the other. From the meeting points, they'll move to where the guard post used to stand. In a one-day inspection, the South Koreans will visit the North Korean guard posts in the morning, and the North Koreans will go to the South Korean ones in the afternoon. This week, South and North Korea will discuss cooperation in the field of health. Seoul's Unification Ministry announced on Monday that officials will meet on Wednesday at the Joint Liaison Office in Kaesong to exchange information on influenza for the winter season, as well as joint efforts for next year to combat infectious diseases. The talks follow the first inter-Korean meeting on health and medical care in 11 years, which took place on November 7th. The ministry says the two Koreas will also meet at the liaison office on Friday to talk about working together in sports. There, they'll discuss sending unified teams to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and possibly co-hosting the Summer Olympics in 2032. Meanwhile, according to the Unification Ministry, the two Koreas have wrapped up their joint project to excavate ancient relics at a site in Kaesong. According to the ministry, 10 South Koreans working with 50 to 60 North Koreans were able to discover the layout of the ancient Goryeo Dynasty palace of Manwoldae. The ministry says the next round of joint excavations will start next February. The Inter-Korean excavation project resumed in November following a working-level meeting by the two sides in September. It had been suspended for 3 years after the shutdown of the Kaesong Industrial Complex in 2016. Now we turn to Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest updates. Michelle, today was a nice break from the extreme cold we had over the weekend. What's it look like tomorrow?
Yeah, and we will have warmer temperatures compared to the past few days, that is. Now, daily highs will rise to positive territory and offering some relief to the dry conditions as well. And meanwhile, Beijing will be sunny under frigid temperatures. And precipitation will fall at different times depending on the regions, and the amount will average between 2 and 7 centimeters, but it will be less over in Seoul, and the south coast will receive rain due to the warmer conditions. The capital and most regions will start the day cold, Seoul at -3 degrees Celsius, and Daegu and Gyeongju at -2 and -1 degrees respectively. And to the day, the highest readings in Seoul will reach up to 4 degrees, while Busan and Jeju reaches double-digit readings into the low teens. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That brings us to the end of this edition of Arirang's News Center. Thanks for being with us, and bye for now.